Hey guys, in this video I will share with you my conclusions after 30 days of using three web analytics tools, which are Google Analytics, Umami, and Plausible. This is the comparison of setup for each tool, pricing, hosting, features for each tool, data availability, and quality. I am using my own post as a script for this video and going in depth on each specific topic. You can find a written version of this research for free on my blog. Link is in the description of this video. So let's get right into this post. First of all, let's quickly skip the TLDR. If you want, you can just skim over it, but we're going in depth. So first of all, let's answer the very important question, which is why would you want to have web analytics tools in the first place? So it might be because, let's say you have a website or web application and you want to track how users are using your website. So for example, what pages do your users visit? What pages are most engaging or least engaging? And what actions are users performing on your websites? So for that, we use web analytics tools. And in this post, I'm comparing three of those after 30 days of using them on my own blog post. So they were all connected for the same time frame and they were collecting data. So once again, this is Google Analytics 4, which I might refer to as GA4. This is the short version of its name. Also Umami and Plausible. So why have I chosen those specific tools? So Google Analytics 4, I guess it's quite simple. It's free and it has become the default choice for a lot of websites. It's basically an industry standard for web analytics. And Umami and Plausible, why those two specifically? So they are both open source and very easy to self-host, which is exactly what I did using railway.app. So this is a hosting solution. And also both Umami and Plausible market themselves as Google Analytics alternative, which I think makes them viable for comparison. And just on a quick note, I was thinking about adding other tools, for example, Matomo Analytics and PostHog. So for Matomo, it just didn't work for me. I mean, even the installation. So I went ahead and added the installation script they had as the installation said, and it just was not detecting the script. So for Umami and Plausible, the installation process is the same and it works. For self-hosted version of Matomo, it didn't, at least for me. So it's not the part of the comparison. And for the PostHog, so theoretically, yes, it is open source, and theoretically, yes, it can be self-hosted, but I couldn't do it. So it might be the skill issue. I'm not sure about this, but let me know in the comments if you have experience with this and if there is maybe a simple way of how to do this. So, and also leave a comment if you want to have an extensive version of this, for example, adding more tools to the comparison or extending the comparison itself. So for example, compare specific features to each other or anything else. So let's talk about initial setup and pricing. For Google Analytics, as I mentioned, it's free. So there is nothing discussed about the pricing, although you might have to pay for the cloud storage of the data, but I will get into that in a second. So about the setup of Google Analytics, I recommend using Google Tag Manager for this because in order to set up custom events, which I will go in depth as well in a second, you will still need Google Tag Manager. So I recommend using that for this setup too. I actually have a guide on how to do this on my blog post as well. It's free, so feel free to click on this link in the blog post and check out how to set up Google Tag Manager for Next.js app. So let's talk about Umami and Plausible now. So for them, the installation process is pretty much the same. You basically, so first step is to deploy a Umami and Plausible instance. So as I mentioned, I use Railway for this as a hosting solution. And why I did this, so Plausible, actually Railway makes it really simple to do this. So you basically go to all templates, analytics, or just search for Plausible on Railway and you will get this template. So you can just self-host it very easily. Same for Umami. So there is a template for Umami as well. And actually even shows you the preview of what it will deploy. For Umami, it's just Umami app and Postgres database for storing the data. As you can see, for Plausible, it's a little bit different. So it's ClickHouse, Postgres, and Plausible app. And it's actually a very important detail because it actually influences the pricing. So, but again, the hosting, like deployment of the tool, is literally 2 clicks away. So you click deploy now, and you click deploy here as well, and you have your Plausible or Umami app. So it's really simple. And once you have your app, it will give you the installation script, which you put in the head tag of the pages that you want to track. So you might not want to track all the pages, but for those that you want, you put the script there. So let's now talk about the pricing for those self-hosted tools. It does differ. So from what I found, Plausible was cost me more to self-host compared to Umami, for example. So Plausible, for the first 30 days of usage, it was about $7.66, while Umami was only $1.24. So I might update those numbers in the future because now, like after more time of using, those numbers actually stabilized a bit, and now Plausible is closer to $6, I think, and Umami is closer to $4. So I think those will be the costs, like actual costs. Again, I might update the numbers for like the longer I use it. So feel free to check out this blog post. It might be updated already as you watch it. So I will be updating those numbers, but for now, this is the bill that I got, actual bill from Railway after 30 days. So let's now compare it to the cloud versions of both of those apps, because actually you don't have to self-host it. There is a cloud version. So if you don't want to bother, although as I showed you, it's just 2 clicks away, but still, if you don't want to self-host this, you can use the cloud version of both Umami and Plausible. So if we go to the Umami website, for Hobby, it's actually $0 a month. So it's free. Like you can use it for free. There are some limitations though. So there is 100,000 events per month, up to 3 websites, and 6 months of data retention. So those are the limitations. And after we go over it, you gonna have to pay for the pro. Oh, if you want to pay for the pro, you just switch plans. So this is how it works for Umami. And again, like for self-hosting, you will definitely pay something because you need to pay for the machine that handles this Umami instance. But for the hobby plan on the cloud, you don't pay anything. So this might be the option for you as well. For the Plausible, it's quite different. So Plausible pricing depends on the amount of page views that you get. And as you can see, even on the cheapest plan of Plausible, you pay at least $9 a month for the growth plan. Again, this data might change because Plausible might change its pricing, but now this is how it is. And also, if you will get, for example, 100,000 page views, again, the pricing changes, and the numbers, as you can see, are quite different from what we see on Umami. So for example, $20 we pay for 1 million events per month. And yeah, events, so page views are one of the events that can happen on the page. So this is how they treat it. And yeah, again, when using the cloud solution, you pay it as a subscription. So you pay a stable fee. When self-hosting, you pay for the usage. So it's different, but still it's worth to compare because, as you can see, self-hosting Umami might not make a lot of sense for you because when using the hobby plan, you pay nothing, but when self-hosting, you definitely will pay something. And for the Plausible, so for the cheapest plan that they have, you will pay at least $9. But for the self-hosted version, you will pay close to $6 or $7 a month. So this is cheaper. So it really makes sense to self-host Plausible, although I will get into details of the limitations that self-hosting has compared to cloud version of Plausible. So, and this difference in pricing between self-hosting Umami and Plausible actually comes to the RAM usage, because this is the biggest amount that I was charged for. So when self-hosting, there's usually 3 things that you get billed on, actually 4. So first one is memory usage, so RAM. You get also charged for CPU, egress, and volume. And as you can see on the screenshot here, the like the biggest amount of things that I could charge for both Plausible and Umami is RAM. So it's here, it says memory. And as you can see, Plausible uses way more memory than Umami. And the reason for that, from what I saw, is because, as I showed you in the template that's being deployed, so Plausible deploys 3 things, while Umami only deploys 2 things. So for Plausible, it's ClickHouse, Postgres, and Plausible application, while for Umami, it's just Umami application and Postgres. So this will definitely use less memory for Umami, and this will, I think it will always be cheaper to self-host Umami anyways. So this is the conclusion for the pricing and setup section. So now let's talk about custom events, like adding custom events to all of those 3 tools, because if you want to track something custom that happens on your website, for example, submitting a form, adding product to a cart, or completing a purchase, so you will need to do some extra work to track that on your website. So for Google Analytics, as I mentioned, this is done by adding some stuff to Google Tag Manager. The actual experience of doing that is somewhat awful, I would say, honestly. So this is the at least 9-step process for each event that you want to add. You can follow it. I might do a deep dive on how to add custom events for Google Analytics. So please let me know in the comments if you want that. But this is not a video about Google Analytics, so we will not be going like, I will not be showing you how to do this because this is not a video about that. So if you want, leave a comment and I will do it. But basically, in short, it takes at least 24 or 25 hours to actually start collecting custom events data. This is because one of the steps, which is wait for GA4 to propagate new event props. So if you, for example, have an event of, I don't know, purchase, and this event has a property of value and currency, so those are event props. And GA4, so Google Analytics 4, takes at least 24 hours to propagate, like process this data, which takes 24 hours. And then you have to add those props to your Google Analytics instance. And only after that, the actual data will be processed and saved. So it takes a while. And as you can see, it's 9-step process on the, like the actual UI of the Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics is okay. Like you have to get used to it, but it's doable definitely, but it takes time. So let's talk about tracking events for Umami. This is done by referencing the Umami object that's exposed, Umami.track function to be specific. So of course, Umami has documentation on that. You can follow this link to get more information on this. But basically, if you take a look at the code snippet, this is an example for the React sample, like just a, let's say we have a button that's called Umami track button, whatever, and we define the event data. So of course, this will have to be dynamic. This is just an example. And then we do umami.track, pass the name of the event, and then pass the data, which is going to be the props, like properties of this event. And this will track and immediately send the data to Umami. So it's basically real time. Like as soon as you click it, Umami will have the data and you will see this in your Umami dashboard, which is really cool, I think, because G4, like Google Analytics real-time dashboard works, but it sometimes has some quirks that it's not as simple and fast as Umami. Also, regarding the custom stuff that Umami offers, so Umami also has the umami.identify function, which can be used to identify sessions between, like for the same user, between devices or like different time, and which is really useful. So I will just show you in a second. Basically, it on the Umami dashboard that you will have after deploying the app, it will look like this. So this is the session on my own website, and like after user logs in, I have used the identify function in the code to attach some properties to the session of this user. As you can see, I have attached email, the ID, which is taken from the database because Umami already has some ID, but it's Umami's session ID, but I have added ID from my database to it, as well as the username from the database. So as you can see, this might be very useful if you want to track same user, logged in user specifically, across different devices, sessions, time this user has visited your website. And Umami makes it really simple to just view what has been going on your website. So what has user been doing? As you can see, it's even between different dates. So it was November 20, and then it's November 24. So as you can see, it's really easy to use this. And I think this is kind of a game changer for web analytics because it makes it really easy to track the same user between sessions. So now let's talk about Plausible and collecting custom events via Plausible. It's basically the same as for Umami technically. I mean, you still define the object and you pass the, like it's plausible, and you do, again, purchase, you say props and pass the event data that you defined above. It works exactly the same. Like you can see the event data immediately on the dashboard. There is one important detail. So in order to actually use those props that you define, for example, value, currency, product ID, you will need to add each of those props individually, like manually on the Plausible dashboard. So you go to Plausible, site settings, custom properties. It will look like this, and you add each prop one by one. So this is not a deal breaker. It's just literally like 2 or 3 clicks, but still you might forget about it. So just take a note if you will be using custom properties that you have to do this. So now let's talk about accessing the data once you have collected it. I differentiate 2 methods of accessing such data, which is via web interface or programmatically, usually via API or SQL. So let's first talk about the web view for each of those tools. So for Umami, it looks like this. You have a dashboard for each website that you connect to it. There is a lot of data, views, sessions, visitors, a lot of it. So it's per page, referrer, so the source of the traffic, and per a lot of other things. So this is the quick overview of the dashboard. Also, you can see the custom events that you have added, sessions, real-time dashboard. You can compare different time periods to each other, and you can create custom reports, which not all the tools that I'm going to be showing you right now actually have this. So let me just quickly show you. So for example, I have created the pages report, which I can choose that date range from. I can add some fields, I can add filters, and this is what I get after this. So let's now take a look at the plausible version of the web view. Here it is, as you can see, and immediately you will notice that the main difference between Plausible and Umami is that Plausible's dashboard is just one page. Like, yes, you can do filters here, you can do custom date ranges, filter that range, and you can also see the current visitors. But as you go down, you will not see like the custom reports builder, which means that Plausible really has some predefined reports, for example, this one. And as you can see, if we go deeper, yes, I can see the traffic, but for example, I cannot see the amount of page views that I got from YouTube, only the amount of visitors, so basically users. And I can also can't see the amount of sessions that I got from YouTube. So this again might not be a deal breaker for you, but Umami definitely has that per referrer. So that's the main difference. And let's go now see the Google Analytics web view for this. This is the web view of Google Analytics. As you can see, it might be a little bit intimidating at the start, but as I mentioned, you kind of have to get used to this. It also has a lot of predefined reports per country, page views, like a lot of stuff. That's actually the home, but you can go into reports to get way more reports than you would probably need, but this is what you get with Google Analytics. Again, it's a lot of predefined reports, but you might need to learn how to read them for some time. But once you get used to it, it might be really useful. And yeah, so out all of those tools, Google Analytics actually has the best tool for building custom reports. Although, as you will see here, for example, if I want to use some other metric, like I want to add this to report, I have 363 of them. So yes, it may take you a while to familiarize yourself with every one of those dimensions. And then there is also metrics, which I have 169 nice of those. So again, you might need to learn um, how all this works, how to build this, but once you do, this can be useful. So this is the web view. Now let's talk about accessing data programmatically. So as I mentioned, it's usually via API or SQL queries, and by API I mean making usually it's called stats API. So Google Analytics has no stats API. That's the most important thing that you need to know. The only way that you can see the raw data of the data you have collected is by exporting it to BigQuery, which is Google Cloud Platform's data storage. And after you have exported the data, you can query it via SQL and safe and organized queries. It's basically like mini dashboard of the queries that you have created. As I mentioned before, Google Analytics is free, but hosting BigQuery, so data export on Google Cloud, you will need to pay for this. I don't have exact numbers of how much you will need to pay for this, but it will cost you some amount definitely. The Umami. So let's talk about the programmatic access of the data for Umami. It does have a stats API. It's well documented. You can use. So this is the overview. You can go to users, and basically once you deploy your instance, so you can query it like this. You can set a post or a GET request to specific routes, and the route like you hit your own web application. So you will have an address, and you hit it with a request, and it responds with the data. This is how you do request to stats API. And actually, for Umami, you can also use the raw data from Postgres directly. By default, on Railway at least, the database is not exposed, so you will need to allow public access to this database. But once you do, you can query the Postgres database directly because data is actually there. And Umami itself is just reading the Postgres data to show you it in a nice interface in the web view. So you might like I would recommend using like direct queries for accessing the Umami database because Stats API is very more like it's way simple, way more simple to use Stats API, but you might want to use the access to the Umami's Postgres database to, for example, let's say making reserved copies of the data, just to make sure that it doesn't break or something. So you might want to use access for that. And since Umami is open source, it uses Prisma under the hood for structuring the data. So you can actually see the official repo for this and refer to prisma.schema file for exact like how the data is structured to query it efficiently. Now let's talk about Plausible. So Plausible's stats API. So when self-hosting Plausible, you don't have stats API. It's only reserved for cloud users. That's the first disadvantage of using Plausible's self-hosted version. But again, for the cloud version, you will have to pay the specific subscription fee, which increases with the amount of page views. Just a reminder. And you theoretically can query Postgres database of Plausible, but it doesn't make any sense because a lot of the like basically all the data that's like events, everything, all that stuff, it's hashed, so you will not be able to read it. I think like I'm not sure why is that, but so basically it uses ClickHouse, and that might be the reason. Again, I showed you what's being deployed for Plausible, and ClickHouse might be the reason why you cannot read raw data from Postgres for Plausible. So this is how you so basically you might want to use programmatic access for Plausible, but when self-hosting, this is like essentially not possible to do. Only cloud users may only use stats API of Plausible to programmatically get the data. So now let's talk about the most important category of this comparison, which is data quality. Because again, if data is unusable, the data that you have collected, why would you even use this tool, right? So when I'm analyzing web traffic, I'm interested in those specific metrics. So page views, also sessions. In some tools, this is called visits, unique visitors, or also called users, session duration, and bounce rate. So, and those are metrics which you might want to put in a specific context. For example, entire web traffic or per page. So let's say I want to have page views per all the pages that we have on our website, or I don't know, sessions for all the locations like cities or countries that our visitors were from. So metrics and context, what matters to me. So I have actually exported the data and presented it here to analyze. And again, like those are data samples. It might not be, especially for the countries, it might not be the exact data that I got, but from data that I got, like I chose the most representative data sample. So usually it was the most data I had, the better. And as you can see, let's first see the stats for entire website traffic. So basically, this is the metrics, and this is what each tool was reporting. Immediately, what you can see is Google Analytics 4, GE4 column. It reports way less data. In some cases, it's twice as less, or like sometimes even 3 times less. And this is quite strange, and this is because basically Google Analytics processes data very differently, and it also samples the data that you want to access and puts thresholds on it. So you will definitely be having less data from Google Analytics out of all of those 3 tools. You can easily see this in the exported reports. And again, those 3 tools were running for the exact same time period. Like I didn't change anything. They are all configured the way that they were supposed to be installed on the website. And this is the data that I got from each tool. So for the page views per page, again, like Umami is reporting 24 page views, GE4 is reporting 12 page views. And like another thing that you will notice in all of upcoming reports is Umami and Plausible are reporting kind of the same data. Sometimes it's exactly the same. Like, for example, for this page, it was 94 page views, and both Umami and Plausible are reporting exact same number of page views. Like it's very, very specific, which makes you think, right? Like if 2 tools, web analytics tools, are saying that this is the number that you got, and then Google Analytics says that, okay, this number was actually 2 times lower, then like it makes you think who is lying here. And like quickly note that Umami and Plausible work completely differently. As I showed you, Plausible uses ClickHouse under the hood, when Umami, like it's open source, you can view the code, like it has like very different way of collecting the data. So I think it really shows that Google Analytics really limits the amount of data that you can get. Now let's take a look at this report, number 3, which is page views per referrer. Here, as I mentioned before, so Plausible doesn't put all the metrics in all the possible contexts, I guess. So what it means is that, for example, I cannot know from Plausible's data how many page views I got from a specific referrer or source. So for example, how many were from Google, which in Umami and Google Analytics also, it does have this data. So Plausible only has for this specific kind of context, it only has data for the amount of users, bounce rate, and session duration, basically, and nothing else. So I cannot know from Plausible how many page views or how many sessions did I have for specific traffic source. This is the difference, one of the differences between Umami and Plausible specifically, because as you can see, they're quite similar in a lot of ways, but this is where they have a difference. And this is for per country report. Again, so it's pretty similar, data that we got between Umami and Plausible, but again, GE4 sometimes reports twice less data than those other tools. So it's different. Specifically per country, tools were reporting very different data. But the main trend, as I mentioned, GE4 has less data. And for this report, Plausible again only has data for users. No page views, no sessions, no session duration or bounce rate. Only the amount of users that I got. So this is unique visitors per device type. So there are desktop, mobile, and tablet. So this is quite funny because, as you can see here, Google Analytics said that I didn't have any users from tablet, while Umami and Plausible had 7 and 2 users, like they saw those users. So, and the overall amount of users from desktop, for example, differs very significantly between G4 and those two other tools. So again, you make your own conclusions on who is lying there. And for this report, for this like context, which is per device type, Umami for some reason was reporting correct data on the summary dashboard, but a little bit incorrect data on custom reports builder. I'm not specifically sure what the reason was, because again, like the filters, the date range were exactly the same, but data was different. But again, Umami is open source, and I will probably raise this ticket, or like not a ticket, like an issue on GitHub to take a look at this, because maybe I am exporting the data wrong here. So we will see about this. I might update the post once I get more information. Summarizing this data quality, as you saw, Google Analytics seems to be sampling and not making all the data available. Plausible doesn't have all the metrics for all the contexts that I want to put them into. And I think Umami easily wins this comparison for data availability and quality, as well as summary dashboards and custom reports builder. So this is my summary of the data quality. I do have some other notes about all of those tools. First of all, there are some differences in tracking methods and definitions between all of those three tools. Specifically, I'm talking about session duration and bounce rate metric. So basically, each of those tools define this metric differently, like each and every one has different definition, and they collect data about this differently. So the data cannot be the same for all three tools, which like I was not expecting data to be the same. I was just looking at the quality, like overall quality of the data. So this is what I want to note. Also, there are some Google Analytics quirks, as I mentioned here. Just one of the example of such quirks is when I was getting traffic from Reddit, I was getting like it's obviously similar traffic, so it's still from Reddit and reddit.com, but Google Analytics, when it reports this data to you, it puts them in different columns or rows, like whatever. Basically, it treats Reddit and reddit.com differently. So you might want to do some extra data aggregation once you export data from Google Analytics. Other tools may have some quirks similar to this, but the Google Analytics is very, like it happens more with Google Analytics, this specific thing. Let's talk about Umami's features. As you mentioned before, I think Umami.identify, like this function that it has, is really a game changer. Again, if you want to measure data across user sessions, devices, like different times that this specific user visited your website, I think that's basically the best thing that you can have. So especially if you want to just see it on the dashboard, because in theory, you can do this for Google Analytics. I don't know, like in Plausible, it seems like it's not possible at all. But for Google Analytics, you can add the user like properties in the config, which will track put properties to the session of a user, basically the same way as Umami does, but you cannot view this data. So in order to actually see what data for each specific user you have collected throughout their journey on your website, throughout multiple sessions, you need to do custom queries on this data. So you need to first export it as a BigQuery, pay for the hosting of BigQuery, and then query this data from BigQuery. As you can see, that's, again, quite a process. It's possible, but it might take you some time. Yeah, and also Umami.identify function, like it makes it really simple to connect your web analytics data with data from your database. So let's say you do have a user in the database, but this user have not yet made any purchase on your website, but you do has this user's, like, let's say email or user ID or like special identifier. And you can, if you pass this data to Umami in identify function, you can then see, okay, so this user has not completed the purchase. What was he doing on my website? And you can see exactly what he did, which I think is really cool when using Umami. And I recommend Umami because of that. This is one of the benefits of Umami, I can say. Also about server-side tracking, this is quite of a niche topic, but it's getting more popular these days because of the ad blockers and all that, especially for Google Analytics, because a lot of trackers do block Google Analytics tracking code and basically make it impossible to track this specific user. And for that, the server-side tracking is being used. So for Google Analytics, you will need to set up Google Tag Manager server container and configure it. I haven't done this, I'm gonna lie, and you might need the help of experienced web analytics specialists for this, because again, this is quite a process. There is also about sending data to Google Analytics server side. You can use measurement protocol for this. There is a documentation for this, but it's basically same as sending data via API, so just a specific route via post request. But again, so even on the official documentation, you can see phrases like you can send them geographic data or device information using measurement protocol, and while it's possible to send this, only partial reporting may be available. Like again, I haven't tried that, but judging of the amount of data that I have collected from Google Analytics, like it's actually twice or like 3 times less data from Google Analytics. So I actually don't see much of use for Google Analytics after making this comparison. Maybe I'm wrong. So if you have some things that I have not properly connected or installed for Google Analytics, please again leave a comment, or I have a contact page on my website. So for Umami, so again, we're discussing server-side tracking. So for Umami, again, you can send data via Stats API. So let's just go, I think it's this link. Yes, so you can actually not only get stats by sending like GET requests, but you actually send the data via server to Umami, to your Umami instance for specific website. So again, it's quite a process, but it's possible, and it's way easier than setting up the server container for Tag Manager. And again, it's just setting a request with events data in the body of this request. And about Plausible's way of sending server-side events, in short, this is not possible. As I mentioned before, like even getting the data from Stats API of Plausible is not possible when self-hosting, and but even when doing the cloud deployment, like using the cloud version of Plausible, it's still not possible to send data server-side. So it's just not there. And although it may seem like this article and this video is processed by Umami or something, it's not. Like I have not been paid anything for by any of compared tools. So this is not sponsored. I simply wrote this article like out of frustration of from Google Analytics, and I just decided to search for the alternative, and I think I found one. So let's quickly also skim through the TLDR section. It's quite straightforward. So for the web view, as you can see, all of those tools have a pretty similar web view, although for example, custom reports builder, it's not available in Plausible, but is available on GE4 and Umami. Like overall user experience on GE4, again, it's simple and extremely difficult at the same time, because once you get into the custom reports building, it might be really difficult at first, but once you get used to it and you understand how it works, it may be simpler. For Umami, I think this is the best UX because it's quite simple, and if you need very like custom reports, you would probably want to use Stats API for this. So and the Stats API is really well documented for Umami. So again, this is better than some other of those tools. And for Plausible, like as you saw, it's just one page, so you don't have much of anything at all here, except for like account settings here. But actual data, like this is all you get when using Plausible. So I think this is about like UX of the web view of these tools. About data export. So this is actually interesting because while preparing data for this post, I was only using WebView for viewing and like exporting the data. So Google Analytics does win when it comes to exporting the data, because I will show you. So once you've made the report, you can export it to Google Sheets, tab separated values, CSV, comma separated values, PDF, and PDF all tabs. So I think like Google Analytics does win on exporting, because Plausible also has export to CSV. Here, I think it's here. This is the button that downloads the folder with CSV files for each of those reports. But again, like you will not get, for this report, you will not get data, for example, or this one, you will not get data for page views. Only like this is the table that you will get literally from this CSV. So I think both Plausible and Google Analytics, like they do have very quick export to the file. Like you can really quickly export the data, but for Plausible, it's not complete. And for Google Analytics, like it's very little amount of data that you get. And Umami, like it does not have like a button to export the data, but actually, if you notice here, it's very easy to just copy paste it. And this is basically tab separated values, because this is a table. And so once you copy it and insert it, for example, in like code text editor, you will be able to edit it as it was the tab separated value export. Again, it's not as good, obviously, as these other tools, but it is possible, and this is what I used to prepare data for this post. So about Stats API, again, Google Analytics doesn't have that at all, as well as Plausible. Only Umami has that, and I think it's nice. So about querying data via SQL, Google Analytics only has this when using BigQuery. Again, you will have to pay for this. Umami has this. It's like you can query Postgres database. Again, I don't specifically recommend this, but it is possible. And Plausible's SQL queries to the Postgres are basically don't make any sense, because data is hashed and basically unusable. Like you cannot use it directly from Postgres. So about initial setup for all of these tools. For Google Analytics, it can be somewhat frustrating, because installing Google Tag Manager does take more steps, and there are some limitations, and you have to turn some things on in the admin dashboard. If you want to see the full like setup for Google Analytics, leave a comment. So like comparing setup process for Umami Plausible and Google Analytics, I think it's very straightforward for Umami and Plausible. Like it's literally you put a script and forget about it. Like you have the data. So about the impact on page load speed. If you do the page speed insights analysis on my blog post, on my blog right now, you will see that even the page speed insights, which is Google's tool to analyze page load speed, will report that Tag Manager is slowing down my pages, which is kind of funny. And if we take a look at how much time is Umami's and Plausible scripts use to load, so it's actually just 2 and 3 kilobytes for those scripts. So it basically has pretty much no effect on how quickly your pages load, which is again a funny detail to think about. So pricing, as I said, Google Analytics is fully free if not using the query. Umami is, I think it's closer to $4 actually. Again, like I will update this blog post once I get another bill, and I will add the new data here. But still, like Plausible will be a little bit more to self-host. Like so for Umami it's like $4 or $5. For Plausible it will be like $7 or $6, I think, or maybe $8 to self-host. On Railway, at least, like you can self-host it in different way. In such case, those numbers will be completely different for you, depending on where you self-host it. And if we're talking about data quality and availability, so I think Google Analytics has the worst quality and availability of the data. Plausible has, again, like it has more data, but only for the metrics that it chooses to report. And not all the metrics can be reported in all the context. And Umami, I think, easily wins the comparison of the quality and availability of the data. So basically, in conclusion of all this blog post, I think that it's quite fair to say that Umami wins this comparison, and I myself am already using Umami as a default analytics solution for all my projects, all my websites, 3 to be specific, and I am planning to use it even more. The only reason I see myself going like back to Google Analytics, and I haven't tried only one thing as for now, is Google Ads like import of the conversions, because Google Analytics makes it real simple to import the conversions to Google Ads. For Umami, it's possible because again, like you can query the raw data, and Google Ads does have the import directly from any Postgres database. So it is possible. I haven't tried that. So this is the only reason that you may want to consider Google Analytics. But again, for the quality of the data, I think it doesn't make sense to choose Google Analytics. So since Umami basically won this comparison, please let me know if I should do the extensive guide or like tutorial on using Umami, from setup to custom events to using identify function to using stats API to querying the database to hosting and all that stuff. So if you want to see that, leave a comment below. If you also, as I mentioned before, want to see more analytics tools compared, also leave a comment on what specific tool you want me to compare. This will be, I think, quite interesting to see how all of them compare to each other. And you can also subscribe to my channel because I am planning to do more content on web development, on web analytics. I'm specifically using Next.js, but it might not be the only topic that I make videos about. So thank you very much for watching this. Hopefully that was useful, and I am hoping to see you in the next video and in the comment section. Thank you and bye.